Tonight we're here as a gathering of the Northwest Brunswick Neighborhood Association to hear from and talk to those who would like to or plan to lead us in the town council and the school board for the next 3 years. The thought, I'm Marybeth Burbank, the current president of the organization, so I get to express my thoughts. The thought I have for this evening is that we have a warm, wonderful get-together without a lot of formality, so that we can hear what these people want to tell us. And we've given them 3 questions to think about before they got here. And I hope, Fred, you'll read the questions. And there is obviously the requirement that we have a little formality called looking at our watches, so that we're not here tomorrow morning without yet getting the question answered. I'm going to begin just for a wee minute to talk a little bit about District 6. That is the district that's being represented on the council and the school board. And we're a part of that. We're a part of it. I tried to get our district blown up into a big enough piece that we could do something with it, but in the blowing up, it lost all its street names. So I'll talk about that. District 6 is the most unusual district in the town. It has more elements than any other, and those elements all have different needs, all have different ambitions, all have different concerns, and those who represent us in elected officially elected positions have got to care about us, because that's what we want them to do in the Northwest Brunswick Neighborhood Association, but they have to care about all the other parts. So I want to just spend a minute and have you think about the other parts of the district. The district has grown over the years in its geography because there is a legal requirement that no district in Brunswick be more than 10% greater or lesser in population than another. That number is a population number from the most recent census. That's how that's determined. Now, the difficulty with District 6 is that it's fairly full of people already. It doesn't have lots of spaces and open lots and places to build houses. So when District 6 needs to be not more than or less than 10% of the others, there's nothing to do but stretch us out and borrow houses, people from the neighboring districts. And thus it is stretched from the downtown area where it was, creepy, up the hill toward First Parish Church and Noble Street. Well, the last one, that didn't go far enough. We'll go to Page Street. And then that doesn't go in number quite far enough, so we'll cross the street to Bowdoin College, and we'll take in a piece of College Street and a part of really college property in terms of how it's used. Then it comes down around Federal Street and the streets that go off Federal Street. It comes down to Water Street and comes around Mill and back where we are in this kind of configuration. Now, what does that mean? That means that the downtown is in this district. It's the very center of Brunswick. It's business center. That means that areas populated with people who work at the college, people who live near the college, people who live in old houses in the Federal Street area that were always considered part of the college. That means that those who live in the towers and terrace on Water Street area in housing that was built for those in need of low-income housing. Curiously built when that was kind of out of town. We won't notice. There were two reasons we won't notice. One was because it was way down there, and the other was that the Androscoggin River was not our favorite place to be. That's not how it is anymore. Water Street is now wonderful. It has a bike path, it has a boat launching, and those who live there are in an entirely different environment, but they're part of District 6. Then we come into our neighborhood and the area of our association. This is the heart of the working history of Brunswick. This is the heart of the French-Canadian population. This is where people lived, where they crossed the swinging bridge to work and working at the mills. This is a very, very historic part of town. But over the years, it became a part of town that was not the Common, and was not Federal Street, and was not on the river, and was needed to serve a large population of people who had limited means. Most of the subsidized housing is in this area. The reason being that people who need help with their living expenses also need help getting their groceries, finding all the other elements of life within a walking distance. So the challenge is to those who serve. I have served as a town councilor from this district back a few years, but I served for 10 years, and I got to know the district well. And those who serve have to balance all those pieces and parts. And the town has to understand that balance. The town of Brunswick has had to learn over the years that I've lived here, and that's 40 some odd. I was here for the last town meeting. That what you need on Outer Church Road is not the same as what you need in downtown Brunswick. Everything was always allotted. We have one policeman on Church Road, we have one policeman on Main Street, and we have one policeman on, well, no. We have density issues. We have the vibrancy of the downtown issues. And those that sit on the council and on the school board have to understand how should it balance. So I have here tonight, just as a point of reference, because this is what they do with it now, every street in town. And if you have a curiosity when you have your second piece of pie, or finally your cup of coffee, or a glass of cider, and wonder, well, how about that one? Well, how about that one? Help yourself. There are all the streets, and there are all the districts. So I think we just sometimes think all the things that are clustered around us are how it all ought to be everywhere. So I just wanted to give a cheer for District 6 as a whole, and the pride we have in being part of it, and at the same time, the need that we as a neighborhood association have to have a vibrant communication with those who serve us in elected office. So we're going to hear from those people, and Fred Horch has volunteered willingly and excitedly to be a moderator and guide us through the events of the evening. There will be a video of the opening remarks that are made in the introductions, and our candidates have 3 questions they've been asked to think about in advance. Both of those things we're going to video so that people who aren't at the meeting can hear what they had to say via our website. The rest of the conversation, the windows are locked and the doors are locked, and say whatever you want to, and so will they. So
Great.
thanks,
Well,
Fred.
thank you very much for that. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Fred Horch. I'll be moderating tonight, and I'll just give you a brief overview of how the event will go, and I'd like to then turn it over to the candidates, and we'll let them talk a little bit about themselves, and then we'll ask them questions. So the first round here, we will hear from the town council candidates. We'll hear from Allison Harris and Jane Millett, and then we'll hear from Janet Connors, and unfortunately, it looks like Daniel Hammond, who is the other candidate for school board, is not here. So we'll hear from 2 town council candidates and only 1 school board candidate.
And that's through
tonight.
no effort of mine, but I think Janet should recognize she's running against a ghost.
That's an extra share on the end there. So what I'd like to do now, I guess, is simply turn it over to each candidate. Maybe we can just go in order. Give you 5 minutes to introduce yourself, and then after those introductions and self-introductions, then I'll ask a few questions, and then after that, we'll open it to questions from the floor if we have time for that. So take it away.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you, Marybeth, for the pies and for organizing all of this with the rest of the board. And thank you, Fred, for agreeing to moderate. And I hope you will forgive me if I read my remarks, because I'm not practiced at public speaking. If you can't hear me, raise your hand, and I'll talk louder. Okay, I'll stand up. Okay, shall I stand?
That
Sorry.
sounds good.
It sounds very Marybeth, you said this was going to be a friendly gathering.
You can put your feet on the table.
I decided to run for Brunswick Town Council because I believe in public service, and I happen to have the time now for this important commitment. We all know that Brunswick is facing significant challenges as it recovers from the closing of the Naval Air Station in a weak economy. At the same time, I fervently believe that this is a community with a promising future. I bring an unusual skill set to the table. I spent much of my career in nonprofit theater, a collaborative field that engages individuals with a wide range of talents to create a season. As a novice, I learned the importance of teamwork, mutual respect, and meeting deadlines. Eventually, I rose to be the managing director of 2 nonprofit theaters. I managed multi-million-dollar budgets, learning to account for every penny spent, and I worked with staff and volunteer board members on creative mechanisms for marketing and fundraising. At both theaters, I managed major capital projects where I engaged with elected officials and review boards on state and local levels on the approvals that were at times baffling and frustrating, even as I knew they were intended to protect the inherent quality of the town. After McCarter, I served in New Jersey's Treasury Department, initially to develop long-range rehab and business plans for a large auditorium complex adjacent to the State House. Later, I was named Legislative Director for Treasury, where I was required to define and defend Treasury's position on bills on issues as diverse as pensions, health care, TIFs, and economic development. Filling a gap between gubernatorial appointments, I served for 18 months as the interim director of the Capital City Redevelopment Corporation, charged with the revitalization of Trenton State House District. I learned that motivated leaders of either party can accomplish great things, not by bullying and obstruction, but by identifying common goals and working toward them creatively and energetically. As Director of Business Development for an architectural firm, I served as liaison between the clients and consultants, able to advocate for the clients who often had grand dreams but limited budgets. Then I helped the design team develop solutions to meet the client's needs within budget and on a realistic time frame. This particular firm was noted for designing additions that complemented existing historic structures and neighborhoods. I came to appreciate the value of renovating significant buildings for environmental, historic, and aesthetic reasons, while coming to grips with the fact that some structures simply cannot nor should be saved. There are threads that link my checkered career through the nonprofit, for-profit, and public sectors. Collaboration, working toward a well-planned, well-articulated common goal, was key to the success of all the endeavors. In state government, I learned that stalling, or kicking the can down the road, is a tried and true tactic that is not tolerated in the private sector, where both nonprofits and commercial enterprises struggle with tight budgets and limited resources. In all three sectors, approaching issues with integrity, mutual respect, and a commitment to the common good enabled worthy programs to move forward cost-effectively and in a timely fashion. Finally, there is my commitment to voluntary public service. It was my work on the Downtown New Jersey Board that led me to seek out the Brunswick Downtown Association. There I found my niche, volunteering at the Visitor Center. I've studied Brunswick and the surrounding area so that I can share my enthusiasm with visitors as well as local residents who stop in. Some of my favorite activities have been working with organizations that span the Androscoggin, like the Riverwalk Advisory Committee and the Topsom Garden Club that includes many Brunswick residents. When I moved to Cumberland Street, I was offered a spot on the People Plus board, just as it was making its exciting move to the old Union Street School. Here we are. I served for 3 years, during which the organization stabilized and grew. I was dedicated to putting fundraising systems in place to ensure the organization's long-term solvency, and I still continue as a member of the Music in April Committee. This spring I was named Volunteer of the Year. It was an honor to be appointed to the Davis Fund Committee for this past year's cycle of grants, which of course included one for our neighborhood's outdoor movies. As a town councilor representing District 6, including my own Northwest Brunswick neighborhood, I would welcome the opportunity to assess where we are now and identify strategies to help build consensus around solutions that will move Brunswick forward. We need to learn from unwise past choices while avoiding recriminations and reinventing the wheel. To accomplish that, we need a clear, long-range plan against which we can measure short-term actions to ensure that we stay on the path to prosperity in a community that welcomes people of all ages, all interests, and all abilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Jane, would you like to?
Sure. Hi. Good evening. My name is Jane Millett, and I have to refer to my notes too. We do have time frames here and haven't memorized everything. I am probably the only person here who does not live in your neighborhood. I'm at 10 Franklin Street in an 1860s home, which is like many other in-town homes in constant need of repair, updating, and renovation. I try to do a major project every year. I love my neighborhood. It's very mixed. We have renters and owners, young and old, professors and retirees, and we're just 2 blocks to Main Street. I was born in Massachusetts to parents who were both Navy veterans of World War II. Dad was a pilot and Mom was a nurse. I moved to Brunswick nearly 40 years ago when my then husband got the job as principal of Brunswick Junior High School. I raised 2 daughters who both went through the Brunswick school system and are now self-supporting adults, I'm happy to say. I earned an undergraduate degree in sociology and worked for a few years in a treatment home for abused and neglected children in upstate New York. That was a real eye-opener for a newly minted college graduate. In the early 90s, I went back to school and earned an MBA and a certificate in human resource management. I've made a career in real estate for nearly 40 years and currently work at Remax Riverside across the bridge in Topsom. Almost continuously since I was in junior high, I've been a volunteer at something. I started in CYO at the old folks home where I lived. When I moved to Brunswick, I was a Girl Scout leader on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Parkview Hospital. I worked on Habitat for Humanity and the Family Selection and the Site Selection Committees. I was on the Brunswick Personnel Board for many years and the Brunswick Community Housing Coalition, which looked for opportunities for affordable housing when there was none in Brunswick. There is now, but there wasn't then. Professionally, I've been in almost every position on the local Board of Realtors, including the Board of Directors and its president, twice being named as its Realtor of the Year, which was a peer selection in a very competitive field. Recently, I held a 2-year position as president of the Maine Women's Council of Realtors. Probably most important for our purposes tonight, I've attended and spoken at many town council and school board meetings over the past several years. My positions and/or questions have been voiced publicly with regard to many issues, and they are generally based on my own research and fact-finding, and have raised some of what I consider to be real concerns over the years. I've been fortunate to travel with both of my children as adults, as my youngest daughter currently works in the travel industry. So I've been to Africa twice with her, and almost 2 years ago we had a very exciting trip to Israel and Jordan. I have 2 grandchildren who live with their parents in Orlando, Florida, which is a great place to visit, especially in winter. And lastly, my mom is 92 years old and lives with my sister and brother-in-law in Hampton, New Hampshire. And I do have some responsibilities for her. She has endless appointments. So that's it. Thank you.
Janet.
I'd like to, I don't know quite what to tell everyone. I have been your representative for the Brunswick School Board for 15 years now, and I'd like to continue for 3 more years. I am a resident of this area, particularly on Cumberland Street. My husband is in the back here, and I have one of the big Victorian monstrosities. I think they were called the dragons or something, like dinosaurs, I guess, at one time. And they are always needing a lot of work. I also, prior to living here in Brunswick, I lived at in town Brunswick, I lived at Mare Point. So I've been a long-time resident of Brunswick and have a historic perspective at my age of not only now the school board, but also the town and the affairs and events that have happened in the town. I have 3 children, adult children. The youngest is in the United States Navy, serving at this point. He's in Millington, Tennessee. I have a daughter who works for LL Bean. She is a job coach right now and gearing up for the Christmas holiday. And I have my oldest daughter, who lives in Durham, has 3 children. So I'm the proud grandparent of 3 quite busy young people, one 10, 8, and a little girl 3. So we're always on the road, it seems, going there. As far as the Brunswick School Board, I have served on every committee that we have right now. I'm on the Policy Committee, the Wellness Committee, see if I can do them all, the Student Affairs, the Facilities, and the Budget. I also have, all 15 years, have been on the board for Vocation Region 10, which is now called Tech 10 school, which for those of you who may not know, we are one of 3 school systems that support and send students to that school, which is located in our town on Church Road. I'm also on the board and have been for 15 years on the board for Mary Meeting Adult Ed. Let's see, what other committees? I can't think. I'm on committees for each one of those boards, too. Personal interests, probably I would say my most favorite thing is voting. We have a boat, and we vote. It's a 24-foot boat, and we go out onto the islands and explore and have a grand time. I also bowl. My husband and I have been square dancers, so we seem to be on the road all the time. And just to give you a little taste for you old ladies to learn, but for instance, this week, as a school board member, I have 2 meetings at least. Yesterday I had 3. I have 2 meetings every day this week, except Friday. But then on Saturday, we're going to Skype to interview a possible candidate for the high school principalship. So it's a job. But I like it. And I think I bring a couple of important things to the school board. One of them is the fact that I don't have an agenda, a particular agenda. I don't have a school that I am trying to promote, or a particular grade that I'm promoting, or that I'm angry about anything. I also have a historic perspective, not only for the Brunswick School Board, now that I've been member for so long, But I also have a historic perspective of the town and the history of the town now, because I've lived here so virtually my life has been here. So I would relish any questions that you might have, and you could probably, I could stand up here and tell you more about my life than you'd ever want to know. So if you have any particular questions about my life, please let me know. I am a teacher. I have been a teacher for 37 plus years. I did take a break and I retired to the baby business for 12 years, and then I went back into education. But I retired from teaching. Well, I really guess I haven't retired from teaching because I volunteer in the Durham elementary schools. I'm asked to come up there and teach special lessons and special activities. So, but I officially retired a number of years ago, and but I have a deep interest in education and children, and that's my motivation to be on the school board, is to make it a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will mention we do have one candidate who's not here tonight, and his name is Daniel Hammond. He would be running for school board as well. So I have some questions here which were solicited from members of the Northwest Brunswick Neighborhood Association, and these have all been provided to the candidates. And I think maybe just to mix things up, maybe we could start, Jane, if you don't mind.
Nope.
I'll read the question, and then maybe if we could have Jane, you start, and then Allison, you can answer the question, and then Jan, you can answer as well. So the question is, how do you plan to find out what we, your constituents, think, and how do you plan to communicate your decisions and the processes behind them to us, your constituents in Northwest Brunswick?
Well, I think the beauty of a small town is that you do get to see your neighbors when you're out and about. But some things cannot be left to chance, and some other things have timetables, and it's important when issues come up to be able to deal with them as quickly as possible. Personal conversations and relationships are the best way to communicate, I believe. Not always, possible on a first-person basis, but and that can be at regular meetup times or by special request or invitation to an event to discuss an issue or a position, or even informally at the grocery store frequently. Then we have the standard methods of email, phone, and the newer ones of website and social media. But the latter methods have some inherent shortcomings, I believe, when we're talking about good communication. The Northwest neighborhood is very well organized as a cohesive group, better than any other neighborhood that I'm aware of in Brunswick or in our district, and I suspect any issue that came up might spark a meeting of this group with your counselor. And I would certainly welcome that opportunity, and I suspect any of us would. It will be important to see how the council really functions. I'm always discouraged when I attend a public hearing or just go and give public comments, which most of you probably know are at the beginning of a meeting. And it seems to me that minds are already made up. It seems it's very discouraging to see that no matter what I say, what question I pose, what research I've done, it doesn't seem to make a difference because people already have their minds made up. So my intention as a counselor is to focus on the facts and the figures, to look at needs versus wants, because we have some real priorities that we need to focus on. On a number of issues, I've done my own research because information that I considered to be important was not available through regular channels. Only by digging did I find out some of that information. Whenever a building is sold or swapped or torn down, it's important to look at timely appraisals, assessments, square footage needed versus what is wanted, accurate projections of impact on future budgets and taxes, and many other factors. Counselors are dealing with millions of dollars worth of public property, and each counselor has a fiduciary responsibility to consider all the details very carefully in order to protect taxpayers. Lastly, it's also important for each of us to take a responsibility to learn about the issues and express our opinions to counselors. One of my favorite quotes came from a bumper sticker many years ago, and it spurred me to become involved, and I hope it will you too. Democracy is not a spectator sport. I like to call District 6 the heart of Brunswick, and in order to keep our heart beating in a healthy way, we need all the members of downtown to support each other, share information, and respect each other's positions when they're based on facts and dialogue. Thank you.
I'm going to jump here and add that I'm going to try to keep us on schedule. So we've allocated 3 minutes per answer. I know you've written out some answers to these questions, so I'll let you read your. But as we go on, if I start to see us running out of time, I'm going to jump in and ask you to conclude your remarks.
Did I go over?
You did pretty well.
Okay.
You did pretty well. Just a little bit over, but just wanted to put that out there. So,
Thank you.
Well, I hope I have a short answer to this question about conversations with constituents. Specifically for the Northwest Brunswick neighborhood, I will of course continue attending Northwest Brunswick neighborhood events, and if invited, and when the need arises, to the neighborhoods board meetings whenever that's necessary. Additionally, my phone number's in the book, my phone number and campaign website, and it's on this card, which I think most of you have, but I have extras if you don't, are on this, there's a contact me page on my website. As a town councilor, my phone number and my email address will be posted on the town website and will be available to anyone who calls or asks at town hall. I also expect to schedule times when I can meet with constituents at coffee shops or elsewhere, and I would be publicizing those in the papers if they'd run the releases, and of course with permission on the Northwest Neighborhoods blog. I welcome hearing from constituents in the Northwest Brunswick neighborhood about any issues that concern you, whether by phone or by email, at the grocery store or the farmer's market, over a cup of coffee, or at other events in town that are outside of our neighborhood. As for communicating my positions, I hope to be concise and precise in public meetings and describing the rationale behind my decisions. For those unable to attend meetings or watch them live, of course, you can always download them later. Subject to, again, the editorial guidelines of our neighborhood's blog, I would be pleased to submit stories or whatever about my work and my positions. Or anyone can, again, just call me and ask what's the rationale for my decision, or you stop me in the street. I hope that as a counselor I would not have to curtail my activities, because I really enjoy doing the things I do, and so Monday mornings you'll find me at the visitor center volunteering like I always do. Thank you.
First of all, I guess I would like to list a few ways that you already can communicate with me, and that is the school department does have a website, and all minutes of all meetings are posted on there. All the backup material that we get at our school board meetings are on the website. I, of course, have copies if anybody needs to see something that they would like to hear what we were really talking about. All our meetings, virtually all our meetings, there are some very rare exceptions that our meetings are not televised. And the reason we are not televised sometimes is because there's just too many people having meetings at the municipal facilities. We will be down coming up, I will tell you, at the end of this year, and I don't quite know, we haven't been told exactly how long and how they're going to work this, but apparently while they renovate McClellan House or building, the McClellan building, they're not going to be able to broadcast from our old facilities because they're going to take it down and move it over there, I guess. So in the meantime, I believe that our meetings will be filmed and then broadcast. We are on Channel 3 at least well, I don't know how many times they run them, but it seems like I could turn on the television and it's, oh my Lord, there we are. But, so we have that. We also are planning some meetings and hearings, informational meetings about the process that we're going through to meet the space needs that we have for our students. I think it's good news. There's the other side to this, but our numbers are increasing, have been increasing in our student enrollment, and that's an indicator that we may have some tight spots. Our superintendent and the administrative team have come up with some ideas, and our school board has come up with some more ideas as possible solutions that would be temporary until we can have facilities for our students, completely big enough facilities. Because, of course, for those of you who don't know, we did have Jordan Acres School, and our plan was to use Jordan Acres School, and we found out that it has major physical problems such that it means practically rebuilding it to make it usable again. But we are looking at the Jordan Acres land right now. I always, going back to the communications issue, I always am willing to go and speak to anybody. My phone is in the phone book. It's also on Channel 3. They run our phone numbers and our address. No, I guess we don't. We asked them not to run our addresses. It was just our phone numbers and our email addresses. Superintendent's office always has that information. Also, it's on the website. So I love to be invited to come and speak and visit with people and talk to people. So I have in the past tried to have special meetings. I've done it with other school board representatives and had a joint meeting to inform our constituents. And the attendance was not very rewarding. So we have not done that recently. But at any point, and we also, I've gone to the seniors housing in a number of places in the town, and we also go to the PTA for the schools to speak to the parents and inform them as to what's going on. There's also newsletters that go out to the students, so for those of you, it doesn't help probably most of the people in this room, but information is, we try to be informing everybody of everything we do, but sometimes we just have little glitches, but we'll try. Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we have you answer this question first. This is a question about facilities, and we'll ask everybody to respond to it, but we'll start with the school board aspect of it. The question is, given the large number of public projects in recent years, Harriet Beecher Stowe School, the new police station, the move of town offices to the McClellan Building, the move of the rec center to Brunswick Landing, and the reduction in funds from the state, do you think Brunswick voters will support a tax increase or a bond for the renovation or construction of the junior high school and Coffin School campuses? And if not, how and when can we complete these projects?
Well, first I will tell you that the school department and the school board has made the decision that we will not do the junior high right away. We are going to focus on the needs of the elementary schools. And if the bond issue or increase in taxes, which I can't imagine it going that way, I would think it would be bond by bond, for us to either renovate Coffin School and expand it, or build a school on the Jordan Acres property. We just recently found out that the preliminary studies for that indicate that we can in fact fit a school of approximately 600 students on that piece of property. Where that was a question, because Jordan Acres did in fact serve 600 students at one time, but it was very crowded, obviously, if you think about it. But this new school is a new design and will meet the needs of our children. One of our biggest needs, by the way, is not only space for our students, because apparently the Navy housing is selling now, what I call Navy housing, and there's an increase in students. It's always a trick in Brunswick to try to figure out how many children you're going to have in school 5, 10, 15 years ahead. And it has been from the days when I was going to school in Brunswick. We were trying to figure out how to have enough schools. Anyway, we are looking at all these things, but in answer to your question about what would we do if we don't have a bond issue passed, we would have to do with what we have, obviously, facilities. And as our superintendent said the other day to me, he said, well, I guess the worst would be that we'd have a major breakdown in one of our schools. Obviously, we have to deal with the boilers breaking down and roofs leaking and those kinds of things, and then we'd have to go to the town council and probably to the public for a bond issue to repair them so that they are habitable for our students. That's the simple answer.
Thank you. Allison, would you like to answer that?
Sure.
I can't accurately speculate on whether Brunswick voters will approve funding to address the deficiencies in the school facilities. I do know that many people I've spoken to as I've walked District 6 are struggling to meet their current tax obligations. At the same time, I met no one who does not want Brunswick to have good schools. Sorry for the double negative. Everyone wants good schools. I firmly believe in a strong public education system for the good of our community and for the good of the country. The primary and most dependable solution that I see is to expand our tax base through thoughtful, careful development that protects our historic downtown and rural areas while encouraging businesses to relocate and expand in designated areas. I'm thinking especially of Brunswick Landing, which holds enormous potential and is already outpacing other base development projects around the country. Although there are other areas for potential development, including Cook's Corner and East Brunswick and even Arrowheart here in District 6. I look forward to working with our state delegation to ensure that Brunswick receives its fair share of state revenues to support our schools and other critical programs. For me, it's a given that we must fund all our essential services. That means schools, public safety, road work and sidewalk maintenance, ensure we have secure elections. At the same time, those hard-earned tax dollars must be invested frugally and effectively to ensure that we get the best bang for our buck. In my view, we need to work together to figure out how to increase the tax base and how to use TIFs wisely to shelter as much of that tax increase as possible to avoid future cuts in state school aid. We need to increase the size of the pie so we don't find ourselves arguing over who deserves the bigger piece, pitting the fire and police against school children or safe roads against safe schools. Thank you.
I surely hope that voters will look at the condition of Coffin School and the junior high school. I think that would be the most convincing thing for you to do to make you aware that we absolutely need to do something about those schools. I went on the tour of those schools last winter. My children were there some 35 years ago, so I haven't been in them very often since then, but they were, I was frankly very troubled by what I saw. There was a lack of energy efficiencies with single pane windows in some situations, minimal insulation, lack of storage, improvised classrooms with no windows at all, flooring tiles that look to me like asbestos, and I see that all the time. The 9-inch square tiles are an indicator. And now we must also plan for security at all the schools in the wake of recent tragedies, one just yesterday. I went to the school facilities workshop yesterday with Janet. We did a quick tour of the entrances and exits to the high school, and that is all that they are planning for, is to do security measures at that school. They had some flooring issues that they were dealing with too, but that was really important. The temporary mobile classrooms at Coffin School are now 45 years old, and they're a perfect example of kicking the can down the road. Now we're talking about adding more of them because we have yet another crisis with increased enrollments, until we can build another school to accommodate the excess children. We have expanded the municipal office space by more than tripling the square footage with the acquisition of the McClellan building. But we still have not resolved the mobile classroom issues, which I think is disgraceful. The money all comes out of the same pockets, whether it's for the schools or whether it's for municipal. And those pockets are your pockets and they're my pockets. And I think we need to prioritize with that in mind. And make our voices heard rather than set one above the other arbitrarily. We need to keep operating costs down and consider other possible sources to generate new income. A program such as Business Partners in Education, where businesses support certain aspects of education or budgets, recently proposed tuition foreign students, which also benefit us culturally, a newly formed group of citizens that hopes to fund certain programs via private contributions, and I'm sure there are many more. We can always learn more by looking at other towns around us and looking at their best practices. Although unlikely at this time, we don't want to give up on the possibility of state funding. I'm not sure that we can complete these projects and also accommodate more new students without a bond or a tax increase, but if there are other opportunities, I would certainly be open to hearing them. Thank you.
This next question is for the school board only. It says, it appears that planning for school facilities was less than accurate for the past 5 or so years. What are your thoughts regarding school facility planning for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, part of what that question I have to disagree with, because I'm not sure that I could agree that the facilities planning has not been in depth and good service to the community as best that you could. It's sort of like rolling the dice sometimes to try to figure it out. We certainly, and I can speak to this having been on this committee, we did not plan and had no clue that Jordan Acres School had any physical problems to the degree that it does. In doing some research, which I didn't do when I came on the board to look at this, but apparently there was some indicators in 1995 that Jordan Acres had some issues. However, when we were in the planning process, that was not shown to us, so we did not know that. So the idea that we were going to go with 2 small elementary schools and Harriet Beecher was the plan until this was kind of a disaster, actually. So we had to close the school, and then we studied whether or not we would fix it or close it permanently. Once we figured out that we could, in fact, because of our decreased enrollment, could in fact fit our students in Coffin School and Harriet Beecher, and the expense of fixing Jordan Acres was horrendous. We chose not to fix Jordan Acres and to put our students at the two schools. It's not a perfect situation for either school, but we are trying to find solutions, including temporary solutions as well as long-term solutions. I think it's the way schools are today. I mean, our schools are old, as I express it. Well, not now. We have two new schools, but our Coffin School and Brunswick Junior High are old and have been, as I like to put it, ridden hard and put away wet. If you think about, they've been maintained extremely well, but just plain wear and tear of the number of people that have used the facilities and the number of students that go in and out of a school every day that sit in those seats that right on the boards, they wear out. And we've really pushed the envelope. And part of it has been, or a big part of it has been the financial situation. You don't want to build new schools. You don't want to put that expense on the taxpayers if you can find a way not to. And we're faced with the same issue again right now in terms of the junior high and Coffin School or a new school. And for those of you to know, we are planning some hearings with the architects so you can see what the architects, the process that the architects have gone through in looking at the properties and evaluating them. Jane's been at a lot of our meetings and have heard a lot of the details, but we're more than happy to share any of them. We're going to do the best we can. And when I came on the board 15 years ago, and I'm very sad to tell you this, but I was on a committee to do with space needs, and we were focused only on elementary and told just do elementary. But we recognized at that time that the junior high needed serious help then. And I'm very unhappy to report that we haven't made much progress on that one, but we're going to keep at it. Thank you.
Okay, this next question is for the town council candidates. District 6 has at least 4 constituencies that require understanding and attention. Homeowners, renters, businesses, and Bowdoin College. What is your sense of the relationship among them? And tell us about your perspective regarding the sometimes competing interests and needs of the poor.
Excuse me, could you repeat the question?
Okay.
Or
Sorry.
turn the fan off? Is it possible?
Circulator came on or down.
I'll yell it out again. Okay, so the question is, District 6 has at least 4 constituencies that require understanding and attention. Homeowners, renters, businesses, and Bowdoin College. What is your sense of the relationship among them? And tell us your perspective regarding the sometimes competing interests and needs of the poor. Everybody get that?
Yeah.
And I forget who went first, but last time. But Jane, you.
Sure. Okay. I think it's a symbiotic relationship of mutual dependence and mutual benefit. We need to have win-win scenarios with all of these facets of our community. We are all downtown because we like what we see and what we get. We have cultural events, we have farmers markets, we have entertainment, services, restaurants, the library, the college, and many of the goods that we use every day. We probably, except for a few minor items, might never need to go out of downtown Brunswick if that were the case. We all need each other, and generally something that affects us adversely for one group will also be felt by the other groups, and vice versa. A plus for one is a plus for all. It's kind of like the Three Musketeers. I moved downtown to be close to everything. I remember once showing a large, expensive downtown home to a group of real estate agents, and they were surprised and skeptical by the high price. I put it to them this way: being right downtown is as good as oceanfront if you want to be in town. That home sold for within 1% of its record asking price. Our real estate ads frequently say walk to town or college, and that's a major selling point for a lot of people. An example of competing interests might be the proposed NEPA facility, although it's not in our district. While most of us want the train service for passengers, we don't want an enormous industrial facility in our backyards or our neighborhoods. We're so close in town because of fumes, noise, increased train movement, and possible danger to children. Those items were all cited by individuals who live close by at the hearing. I suspect we all feel some adverse ramifications if it is built where it is currently proposed, and I'm not convinced that moving it to another location just a bit further down the tracks would have an adverse effect on our passenger service. We need to preserve our downtown heritage before it's totally gone. I was recently at Earl Shuttleworth's talk on the history of downtown Brunswick, sponsored by the Brunswick Development Downtown Association. He was asked if it was true that the old town hall was torn down because the quality of the bricks that were used were bad. He said that was really a contrived response because the people who were making the decisions back then wanted to tear it down. That's a lesson from history that we need to take to heart. Another example, I was shocked at how the council backed into the vote to sell the rec center, citing the danger to young children from fire, while they had not been concerned about that danger for the previous 40 years when my daughter was there. It seemed like a good way to make an unpopular vote palatable by citing the fire danger. Another example, when I was knocking on doors the other night, a resident was concerned about moving from a neighborhood concept to encroaching business requirements, such as expansion of parking areas into her neighborhood. Also, she said the new school, Harry Beecher Stowe, does not allow residents or neighbors to walk their dogs on the grounds, whereas there was no such restriction for the previous school that was there. That's a loss for this person. That's a neighborhood loss. Another neighbor said his family had lived in that home, in the home that he was living in, for 3 generations, but if taxes go higher, he will likely have to sell. These are losses for in-town neighborhoods. We need to protect them whenever we can. Recently, my neighborhood is losing 2 neighborhood gathering places in the Federal Street buildings of Town Hall and the Rec Center. They are very real losses to our neighborhood. We've lost schools. We've lost now those buildings. And I really think that we need to look at what our neighborhoods require. In the comprehensive plan, one of the models is the Great American Neighborhood. And that neighborhood surrounds a school, it surrounds a store, and it's a real feeling of community. And so that's what we need to protect. Thank you.
First of all, I think it's grand. I view the 4 constituencies less as competing factions than complementary sectors that enhance the Brunswick community. Their synergy is exactly what brought me and my husband to live in downtown Brunswick in the first place. We love our street with its mix of single-family and multi-family homes, anchored by Schofield House and People Plus at one end, and a Tedford shelter and a beautiful new Habitat for Humanity homes at the other, just a couple of blocks from the Androscoggin and the historic swinging bridge. Being within walking distance of Main Street businesses, the Bowdoin campus, and so many public services, the library, the post office, the train, the bus, not to mention the new walk-in clinic, is just great. I've seen firsthand the contribution Bowdoin has made to People Plus with its generous IT support to bring it into the 21st century, and its generosity to other service organizations with its annual spring yard sale and the platoons of students that it sends throughout the community on Common Good Day. There also are the free cultural and sporting events it opens to the community, along with classes when the professor grants permission to audit. Since I was raised in apartments and later lived in basements and walk-up tenements when I was in college and starting out professionally, I am an advocate for safe and sanitary rental properties. We need affordable housing to enable young families and young individuals to live in Brunswick and to permit long-time citizens to stay in their homes. At the same time, the move toward buying and upgrading historic homes for those who can afford them increases property values and rateables and beautifies our historic neighborhoods, which is an encouraging development. That doesn't mean that there isn't friction from time to time. As I've walked District 6 these past few weeks to introduce myself, I've heard tales of inconsiderate tenants, neglectful landlords, noisy students, noisy drunks leaving the bars at 1 o'clock, and speeding traffic in areas of pedestrians and cyclists. To some extent, this is a function of life in a dense downtown area. At the same time, thoughtful regulation and systematic, even-handed enforcement can go a long way to correcting these problems. The planned review and revision of town zoning over the next year should help avert potential conflicts between college, businesses, and residents by creating a logical roadmap for future development that protects the essential character of Brunswick. I've really enjoyed learning about District 6. So far, I've climbed up a lot of back steps. I've handed out about 950 palm cards. I've met some terrific people who generally share my love of Brunswick. Some express concern and frustration, of course, and as a town councilor, I'll work hard to understand their issues and within my power resolve them harmoniously, working with my colleagues on council and with town staff. Thank you.